Auckland consistently ranks among the most unaffordable major housing markets globally by the median multiple measure. A ratio of 10:7 in 2023 means a median income household must devote more than a decade of gross income to purchase a median-priced dwelling, a ceiling that structurally excludes the majority of renter households from home ownership at current income and price levels. The decade preceding the NPSUD was characterized by a structural supply deficit. Annual building consents consistently fell short of the dwelling additions required to match population growth and household formation. Restrictive zoning, a tightly drawn metropolitan urban limit, mandatory minimum lot sizes, and constrained infrastructure funding combined to limit developable land and suppress the supply response to rising prices. The National Policy Statement on Urban Development, 2020, 1 NPSUD, mandated significant upzoning of Auckland's residential land, enabling intensification near transit corridors as of right. Building consents reached record volumes by 2022, indicating the supply response that previous planning rules had suppressed was latent in the market. Whether this correction is sufficient and whether demand-side complementary measures are needed is the active policy debate between the supply reform and demand management camps. The NPSUD upzoning created theoretical capacity for approximately 900,000 additional dwellings in Auckland, roughly 3 times the city's projected 30-year demand. The gap between theoretical capacity and the delivery pipeline is the operative problem. Planning permission does not translate automatically into buildable sites. Infrastructure readiness, development economics, and residual planning protections all act as filters between zoned capacity and consented, constructed dwellings. Development contribution levies and the cost of upgrading aging reticulated networks represent the primary non-planning barrier to intensification in Auckland's inner suburbs. Auckland Council's capital programme is insufficient to fund the network upgrades required by the consent volumes now being sought, creating a queue effect and pricing marginal infill sites out of feasibility. Auckland Council's future development strategy projects approximately 2/3 of the city's 30-year growth will occur through infill intensification and 1/3 through greenfield expansion. The compact intensification camp argues this split is economically and environmentally rational. The urban expansion camp contests that the infrastructure cost and delivery pace of inner-city intensification makes greenfield release necessary to hit the required volumes. Housing in Auckland begins with the ground itself. Before any argument about zoning, affordability, or the role of the state, there is a specific stretch of land, an isthmus between 2 harbours, punctuated by volcanic cones, bounded by ranges to the west and south, and surrounded by one of the longest coastlines of any urban region in the world. That ground has a legal and cultural history that precedes the modern city by centuries. Everything that follows in this section, supply economics, affordability, homelessness, public housing, Maori housing, tax reform, infrastructure, climate, and the quality of the existing stock, rests on the substrate described here. The discussion that follows is deliberately structural. It emphasizes features of Auckland's land that will still be recognizable to a reader 50 or 100 years from now. Current political debates are mentioned only where they illustrate a durable tension, not as ends in themselves. Auckland sits on a narrow isthmus, roughly 2 kilometres wide at its narrowest point, between the Waitemata Harbour to the east and the Manukau Harbour to the west. That geometry is permanent on any civilizational timescale, and it is the single most consequential fact about the city's land. It concentrates transport, amenity, and commercial gravity onto a thin strip, forces every north-south journey through a small number of choke points, and makes any land close to either harbour structurally scarce. The isthmus is also the surface expression of the *** Auckland volcanic field ***, a collection of roughly 50 scoria cones, maars and tuff rings, erupted over the past 250,000 years. The field is geologically active rather than extinct. Future eruptions are considered a low probability but real component of the region's long-term hazard profile. Many of the cones are protected as reserves and viewshafts, and the 2014 Taumaki Makaurau collective settlement places 14 of the most significant maunga under the co-governance of the Tupuna Maunga Authority, a legal arrangement designed to endure. To the west, the ** Waitakere Ranges ** approximately 16,000 hectares, and to the southeast, the ** Hunua Ranges ** approximately 17,000 hectares, are regional parks. They are, for practical purposes, permanently removed from the developable land base. The same is broadly true of the Hauraki Gulf Islands, gazetted as reserves, and of the extensive marine and coastal park systems. The Auckland region has a coastline of several thousand kilometres, exceptionally long for a metropolitan area of its size. A significant fraction of that coastline sits at elevations that are vulnerable on 50 and 100-year horizons. Projections from the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research suggest sea level rise in the order of 0.3 to 1, 2 meters by 2100, depending on the global emissions pathway. The practical consequence is that parts of the low-lying Tamaki estuary, Mangere, the western reaches of the Manukau harbour, and a number of North Shore bays are already on trajectories toward higher flood frequency, reduced insurability, and eventual managed retreat. The January 2023 Auckland anniversary floods made the existing floodplain maps politically visible in a way they had not previously been. Figure 1. Coastal land exposed under a 1% AEP storm tide plus 1m sea level rise, a mainstream 2100 exposure scenario. Modelled by NIWA for Auckland Council, the topography of the region is less flat than its administrative footprint suggests. Ridgelines, steep valleys, unstable soils in the west, and extensive alluvial floodplains across the south and northwest all reduce the share of land on which housing can be built at low infrastructure cost. For planning purposes, the region's physically developable land base is smaller than its total area, and is shrinking at the coastal margin even as the population grows. The Tamaki Makaurau, Tamaki desired by many, has been one of the most contested and most populous parts of Aotearoa for centuries. Its twin harbour portage, volcanic soils, fishing grounds, and strategic position made it valuable to a number of iwi and hapu whose interests overlap rather than divide cleanly. Iwi with mana whenua interests in the Auckland Isthmus and its surrounds include Ngati Whatua, with Ngati Whatua Orake in the central isthmus, Te Kauraumaki in the west, Ngai Tai Kai Tamaki in the east and inner Gulf, Ngati Paroa and the wider Marutuahu Confederation in the east and Hauraki, Waikato, Tainui in the south and southwest, and Te Akitai Waiohua in the Mangere and Ihumatau areas, among others with specific site-based interests. Overlapping interests are the norm rather than the exception, and any framing that implies a single mana whenua voice for the region is incorrect. The arc from pre-colonial land use, through 19th century crown purchases, the 1860s wars, the native land court's individualization of customary title, 20th century urban displacement, and the treaty settlement process since the 1990 is too large to do justice to on a housing page. 3 points matter for the purposes of this section. First, by the late 20th century, the overwhelming majority of Auckland region land had passed out of Maori hands, with the single largest mechanism of loss being the individualization and piecemeal sale of customary title through the native land court from 1865 onward, not direct confiscation. Second, treaty settlements from the 1990s to the present have returned meaningful, though modest relative to historical loss, land, commercial redress, and cultural instruments. Post-settlement, iwi are now significant Auckland landowners and developers. Ngati Whatua Orake has built and operates several hundred homes at Orake, with further development planned. Multiple iwi hold commercial property portfolios and are increasingly active in master-planned housing. Third, this is a durable structural shift. Over 50 and 100-year horizons, iwi are likely to be among the most consequential long-term landowners and developers in the region, because unlike most private landowners they are intergenerationally constrained. Land returned through settlement is held for descendants, not for resale and exit. A fuller treatment of mana whenua perspectives on land and housing is the subject of a dedicated subpage, and is deliberately reserved here. Auckland's land is held by a heterogeneous mix of actors whose time horizons and motivations differ substantially. In rough terms, private freehold dominates the residential footprint and much of the rural surrounds. It is highly fragmented, hundreds of thousands of small titles, which makes the assembly of development-sized parcels expensive and slow. Auckland Council and its council-controlled organisations hold the regional and local park estate, community facilities, stormwater reserves, water and wastewater infrastructure land through watercare, the port land and the transport corridors. Measured by strategic significance, the council is arguably the single most consequential landowner in the region. The Crown holds the Department of Conservation Estate, smaller in Auckland than in the South Island, the Aotearoa public housing portfolio, state highway land, defence land, and the school estate. Iwi and post-settlement entities hold an expanding portfolio concentrated in specific areas including Orake, the Humatao vicinity, parts of South Auckland, and the Hauraki Gulf Islands. Maori freehold land under Te Ture Whenua Maori Act is a small share of the region, typically multiply-owned, with development heavily constrained by title complexity rather than by physical capacity. Heritage trusts, churches, universities, and hospitals hold non-trivial portfolios that are often protected from sale. Land-banked private holdings zoned but undeveloped land held for capital appreciation rather than use matter particularly at the metropolitan edge, in the future urban zone. Two structural features of this pattern stand out. The first is fragmentation. The sheer number of small private titles means that any proposal which requires assembling contiguous parcels for large-scale intensification, infrastructure corridors, or masterplan development runs into high transaction costs that are not easily reduced by regulation alone. The second is title-locked land. Significant areas cannot easily change use on any reasonable timescale. Treaty settlement lands with cultural covenants, heritage-listed sites, regional parks, the Tupuna Maunga, and DOC reserves should be understood as permanent fixtures of the developable map, not contingent ones. Zoning and land use regulation sit on top of physical land and decide what can be built where. The full history of Auckland's planning regimes is a story for another page. The points that matter for a structural view are these. Until 2016, land use rules in the Auckland region were the patchwork of 8 separate district plans inherited from the pre-amalgamation councils. The 2016 Auckland Unitary Plan consolidated these into a single instrument, introduced a hierarchy of residential zones designed to enable intensification, and upzoned a large portion of the existing urban footprint. On current evidence, it is the most consequential land use decision made in the region in a generation. Layered over the unitary plan are a number of overlays and boundaries that matter structurally. Special character overlays restrict demolition and form in heritage areas of the inner isthmus. Once designated, such overlays have historically been very difficult to remove. A reader in 2076 should expect many of today's character areas still to exist. View shafts radiate from a number of volcanic cones and constrain building height in specific corridors. Rural-urban boundary separates the area where urban development is expected from the land where it is not. Its position is politically contested and periodically revised. The future urban zone designates land earmarked for eventual urbanization, typically awaiting infrastructure investment and structure planning. Underneath all of this sits the Resource Management Act 1991, currently being replaced. On any century-scale view, the near certainty is that whatever statute replaces the RMA will itself be replaced again within 50 years. Regulatory regimes come and go. The physical inventory of categories, character Maunga harbour-adjacent flood-prone Maori teat, NL mi, ANC mi on NS, mi traine ND mi, iwi settlement, persists far longer than the particular statutes that govern them. A reader in 2076 or 2126 will still recognise most of the following. 1. The isthmus geometry and the twin harbours. Permanent on any meaningful timescale, everything roots around them. 2. The volcanic field and its view shafts. The cones are culturally and legally protected, the view shafts will persist. 3. The Waitakere and Hunua ranges as land banks of last resort. Conservation estate is politically sticky. 4. Climate-driven loss of coastal developable land. The trajectory accelerates through the century. 5. Heritage character zones in the inner isthmus. Once designated, near impossible to remove at scale. 6. Fragmented private freehold. High assembly costs will continue to shape what gets built and where. 7. Iwi as permanent, intergenerational landowners. A growing share, a long time horizon, and uniquely among major landowners, no exit option. 8. Auckland Council as the largest strategic landowner. Through parks, reserves, corridors, and its CCOs, the portfolio outlasts any particular elected administration. 9. Central Crown holdings in housing, transport, defence, and education, subject to national political cycles, but slow to change in aggregate. 10. Regulatory regime instability. The specific statute changes, the underlying question of how to allocate land use rights does not. The following are the long-run questions that still matter in 2076, regardless of who is in government. A defensible public document on Auckland's land can describe them, set out the evidence, and present the camps. It cannot and should not resolve them. How much of Auckland's land base should be permanently held in conservation, open space, or ecological function? And what is being traded off against housing supply, carbon, biodiversity, amenity, and climate resilience? What is the right long-run split between intensification of the existing urban footprint and greenfield expansion at the metropolitan edge, or in concentrated satellite towns? How can the development of multiply-owned Maori land be enabled without alienating it? And who decides? Who captures the uplift when land changes use? The landowner, the developer, the community, or the Crown through land value taxation or a betterment levy? How is climate-driven managed retreat to be funded, governed, and allocated over the coming century? Who pays and who stays? Should urban limit regulation be tighter to protect ecology and force intensification, or looser, to deliver cheaper housing at the margin? What is the right long-run ownership mix between private freehold, iwi, community, and public hands? How are the values of place and permanence, cones, heritage, mana whenua sites, long-standing neighbourhoods, to be weighed against the urgency of the housing need? These questions are the spine of the housing section. Every subsequent subpage can be read as an attempt to inform a particular slice of them. State variables, developable area hectares, ownership distribution by actor, zoned capacity dwellings, title fragmentation index, coastal land at risk sea level, heritage overlay area, inputs, rezoning decisions, infrastructure investment, treaty settlements, climate change trajectory, demographic change, constraints, physical geography and volcanic field, coastlines and sea level rise, heritage and character overlays, tupuna maunga co-governance, fragmented private freehold title, te ture whenua multiply-owned Maori land, resource management statutory regime, feedback loops, price of land investor, demand for land banking, reduced supply of developable land, price of land density amenity, pressure heritage designation, future density constraint infrastructure capacity development, pattern bidirectional, iwi post-settlement holdings intergenerational development capacity, coastal risk disclosure insurance, retreat managed retreat pressure. A number of distinct positions recur in Auckland's land debate. Each is defensible on its own terms, none is obviously correct, and in practice most real policy programs combine elements of several. They are presented here in alphabetical order and without ranking. Compact city intensification first. Auckland should accommodate growth within its existing urban footprint, because peripheral land is ecologically and economically costly to urbanize. Flagship moves, hold or tighten the rural-urban boundary, remove remaining special character overlays, upzone aggressively along rapid transit corridors, strengthen density bonuses near transit nodes, tensions, heritage preservation and character area politics, rural and lifestyle block landowner expectations, household preferences for detached housing, construction sector capacity to deliver dense product at scale, interventions on the system, increase zoned capacity within existing urban footprint, state variable, zoned capacity dwellings sign, remove character overlays to allow demolition and redevelopment of heritage stock, state variable, developable area hectares sign, relaxes heritage and character overlays, advocates, Greater Auckland Commentariat, Ryan Greenaway McGrevy and collaborators, parts of the Helen Clark Foundation, parts of Treasury, conservation first biophysical limits. A growing share of Auckland's land should be permanently returned to, or retained in, ecological function, and urban density should absorb the resulting growth. Flagship moves, expand regional parks and conservation reserves, make the rural-urban boundary effectively permanent, offer private land conservation incentives such as KE-style covenants, introduce biodiversity net gain requirements for new development, tensions, housing supply and affordability in the short to medium term, equity implications of foreclosing peripheral expansion for first home buyers, opportunity cost of agricultural and horticultural land, interventions on the system, permanently lock the rural-urban boundary against outward expansion, state variable, developable area hectares sign, expand biodiversity protections onto private land via covenants and incentives, state variable, ownership distribution by actor sign, 0, advocates, forest bird, KE National Trust, sections of the academic ecology community, some iwi environmental arms, devolved governance institutional reform. The binding long-run constraint is the Crown-Council fiscal relationship and Auckland's limited ability to finance its own strategy on land and infrastructure. Flagship moves, Crown-backed wholesale borrowing for council infrastructure investment, expanded land value capture tools for rezoning uplift, greater constitutional autonomy for Auckland within the national system, regional-level fiscal instruments, infrastructure levies, targeted rates, tensions, national government, political economy and central-local dynamics, interregional equity across the rest of New Zealand, accountability risks of concentrating power at metropolitan level, credit rating and sovereign debt implications, interventions on the system, enable Auckland Council to borrow at Crown-equivalent wholesale rates for infrastructure, state variable, zoned capacity dwellings sign, relaxes resource management statutory regime, introduce a land value capture levy on rezoning uplift, state variable, ownership distribution by actor sign, 0, advocates, sections of local government reform advocates, some infrastructure economists, elements of the Auckland Council executive over time, greenfield expansion, intensification alone cannot deliver enough housing at acceptable cost, and the metropolitan boundary must move outward to absorb demand. Flagship moves, release future urban zone land faster, extend the rural-urban boundary, invest in infrastructure to greenfield areas, underwrite edge development via targeted rates and financing, tensions, ecology and biodiversity loss on the urban fringe, carbon emissions from car-dependent peripheral development, infrastructure cost per dwelling at the margin, loss of productive rural and horticultural land, climate-exposed nature of many candidate expansion areas, interventions on the system, accelerate release of future urban zone for urbanization, state variable, developable area hectares sign, relaxes resource management statutory regime, extend the rural-urban boundary outward, state variable, developable area hectares sign, relaxes resource management statutory regime, advocates, development industry associations, some outer suburb local boards, parts of the affordability advocacy community, land market reform value taxation. The structure of land rights and taxation, not zoning alone, determines how land is used over the long run. Flagship moves, land value tax applied annually on site value, betterment levy on rezoning uplift, vacant land tax on undeveloped zoned residential land, reform of heritage compensation frameworks, tensions, resistance from existing landowners, including asset-rich retirees, practical challenges of mass valuation in the New Zealand context, political feasibility of shifting the tax base toward land, transition effects on current owners under pre-existing expectations, interventions on the system, introduce a land value tax to incentivize productive use of zoned land, state variable, title fragmentation index sign, levy rezoning uplift to fund associated infrastructure, state variable, ownership distribution by actor sign, 0, advocates, the Opportunities Party top, parts of the NZ initiative on LVT specifically, Max Rashbrook and related inequality-focused commentators, elements of the academic tax community, Maori en Elmi A&D mi land use papakainga, significant housing capacity, exists on iwi-owned and Maori freehold land, and the barriers are primarily regulatory and financial rather than physical. Flagship moves, Reform Te Ture Whenua Maori Act to enable development without alienation, Crown funding and finance for papakainga and iwi-led master plans, Crown role as co-investor rather than deliverer, streamlined consenting for Maori, NL mi an ND mi developments, tensions, expectations of non-Maori landowners about parity of regulatory treatment, pace of treaty settlement implementation, capacity constraints of iwi development arms, durability of legal protections against future alienation, interventions on the system, Reform Te Ture Whenua to unlock multiply-owned Maori land for development, state variable, zoned capacity dwellings sign, relaxes, Te Ture Whenua multiply-owned Maori land, Crown-funded papakainga infrastructure and finance, state variable, ownership distribution by actor sign, 0, advocates, te matapihi, iwi housing arms and CHPs, te puni kokiri programs, te pati Maori, polycentric satellite growth. Neither centralized intensification nor unbounded edge sprawl is optimal. Growth should be concentrated in defined nodes such as Warkworth, Kumeu, Pukekohe and Drury. Flagship moves, structure plans directed to named growth centers, rapid transit investment linking nodes to the core, hold rural land between nodes in semi-rural use, cluster employment, services and density at node cores, tensions, high infrastructure cost of building up multiple centers in parallel, risk of low density sprawl filling gaps between nodes if boundaries are not held, transit capital cost and timing, employment follows density imperfectly on decadal timescales, interventions on the system, concentrate growth at defined nodes with rapid transit connectivity, state variable, zoned capacity dwellings sign, hold agricultural and ecological land between nodes through zoning, state variable, developable area hectares sign, 0, relaxes, resource management statutory regime, advocates, some regional planners, Auckland Council future development strategy authors over time, the Auckland Isthmus is approximately 2 km wide at its narrowest point between the Waitemata and Manukau harbours, confidence, high, cited only land information New Zealand parcel data, titles, topographic maps, the Auckland volcanic field comprises approximately 50 scoria cones, Mars, and tuff rings, erupted over the past 250,000 years, confidence, high, cited only GNS science publications on the Auckland volcanic field, the Waitakere Ranges Regional Park covers approximately 16,000 hectares in the west of the Auckland region, confidence, high, needs verification, Auckland Council Research and Evaluation Unit, REMU, monitoring reports, the Hunua Ranges Regional Park covers approximately 17,000 hectares in the southeast of the Auckland region, confidence, high, needs verification, Auckland Council Research and Evaluation Unit, REMU, monitoring reports, NIWA projects sea level rise of approximately 0.3 to 1, 2 meters by 2,100 for the Auckland region, depending on global emissions pathway. Confidence, high, needs verification, NIWA coastal hazard and sea level rise projections for Auckland. Ngati Fatua Orake has built and operates several hundred homes at Orake, with further development planned. Confidence, medium, needs verification, Ngati Fatua Orake, iwi published reporting and development disclosures, the Native Land Court began operating in 1865, individualizing Maori customary title into freehold, Over the subsequent century, piecemeal sale of individualized titles became the single largest mechanism of Maori land loss in the Auckland region, larger than direct confiscation. Confidence, high, cited only, Waitangi Tribunal, Tamaki Makaurau Settlement Process Report, Y388, and related, Land Information New Zealand, Parcel Data, Titles, Topographic Maps Toitute Whenua Land Information New Zealand, Niwa Coastal Hazard and Sea Level Rise Projections for Auckland National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research, NIWA, GNS Science Publications on the Auckland Volcanic Field GNS Science Te Puau, Auckland Council Research and Evaluation Unit, RIMU, Monitoring Reports Auckland Council, Auckland Upzoning and Housing Supply, Empirical Studies Ryan Greenaway McGrevy and Collaborators, University of Auckland Academic Journals, Waitangi Tribunal, Tamaki Makaurau Settlement Process Report, Y388, and related Waitangi Tribunal Te Ropu Wakamana I Te Tiriti o Waitangi, Department of Conservation, Conservation Estate Boundaries, and Public Datasets Department of Conservation Te Papa Atahai, generated from problem, housing, land on 2026-04-23, do not hand edit the entity files under content/Auckland/data/ and rerun Python tools/render, problem, housing, land, The defining metric of ownership in accessibility is the deposit gap, the number of years of median household saving required to assemble a 20% deposit on a median Auckland dwelling. In the 1990s, this was a realistic savings project within a single working decade. By the early 2020, it had expanded into a multi-year, and in many cases multi-decade undertaking. For a household starting to save in its mid-20s, this pushes first home purchase far later in life than it fell for the preceding generation, and only if prices do not continue to rise faster than saving accumulates. Households without parental equity transfer, the bank of mum and dad, face a structurally different entry barrier than those with it, producing a compounding intergenerational inequality in wealth accumulation. The tax-free treatment of capital gains on owner-occupied property, the effective exemption of imputed rent from income tax, and the historical deductibility of rental property expenses together make residential property the most tax-advantaged asset class available to New Zealand households. This advantage capitalizes into prices. Investors and owner-occupiers rationally pay more for a dwelling than its rental income yield would justify because the after-tax return on housing exceeds competing assets. Between the mid-1980s and the early 2020s, Auckland dwelling prices rose far faster than incomes in real terms, a divergence not explainable by supply alone. Auckland house prices are more sensitive to short-run credit conditions than to supply fundamentals. The 2021 surge and 2022-23 correction tracked the RBNZ OCR cycle, not changes in dwelling stock. This credit cycle dominance means that even well-designed supply reforms operate over a long lag, while prices can move sharply within a year or two, creating ownership timing risk that falls disproportionately on first-home buyers with less equity buffer. Auckland renters spending above 30% of gross income on rent are classified as housing stressed. Those above 40% face severe cost burden. No authoritative source publishes the median Auckland renter household's rent as a precise share of gross income, but rental costs consume a large share of income for many renter households, and a significant proportion of those in the lower two income quintiles spend more than 40% of gross income on rent. Households in those quintiles, those earning too much for income-related rent subsidy but too little to absorb market rents without financial stress, are disproportionately exposed. High rent is more damaging when tenants cannot plan around stable housing costs. New Zealand's tenancy norms, historically dominated by 6-12-month fixed-term tenancies with no rent stabilisation, have made renting structurally less secure than in comparable OECD countries. The 2020 Residential Tenancies Amendment Act removed no-cause termination for periodic tenancies, but the Residential Tenancies Amendment Act 2024, in force from 30 January 2025, reinstated 90-day no-cause terminations, and rent increases remain uncapped. Tenants are therefore exposed both to speculative uplift at each renewal and to termination without reason, and cannot credibly budget beyond the current term. Persistently low rental vacancy rates give landlords pricing power independent of broader cost of living dynamics. When only a small fraction of rental stock is vacant, renters competing for available properties face upward rent pressure at every transition. Vacancy tightness also reduces tenants' ability to exit poor quality or unaffordable tenancies, weakening bargaining position and making both the cost and quality dimensions of the problem mutually reinforcing. Approximately 24,000 households were on the National Public Housing Register as of June 2023, with Auckland carrying the largest regional share. The register predominantly comprises households in priority need, those experiencing homelessness, severe overcrowding, or family violence, for whom the private market is either inaccessible or unsafe. In the absence of sufficient public tenancies, households in acute need are placed in emergency housing, predominantly motel accommodation, funded by MSD special needs grants. The Crown spent approximately NZD 340 million per year at the programme's peak on this substitute, a high-cost, low-stability outcome that does not resolve underlying housing need and generates significant harm for children and families in long-term motel placements. New Zealand's public housing stock as a share of total dwellings has not recovered to the level needed since the 1990s sell-off. Aotearoa's build programme has added stock, but has not closed the gap. The active debate is between direct Crown expansion of Aotearoa's programme and diversification to community housing providers and iwi housing entities, each of which has distinct financing, cultural, and accountability trade-offs. Dwelling construction productivity in New Zealand is not the uniform flatline it is often described as. Te Waihanga finds construction labour productivity has improved steadily since the 2008 global financial crisis. Over 2020, building construction labour productivity rose about 23%, and construction services about 25%, placing New Zealand in the top half of the OECD on this measure. The acute weakness is heavy and civil engineering construction, which grew only about 5%, and civil works account for roughly 80% of the cost of building and maintaining the infrastructure networks that gate new housing. Post-COVID, build costs rose roughly 44% nationally and 39.4% in Auckland over 2020-2024 on QV's Cost Builder Index, with most of the increase concentrated in 2020-2023 before moderating to under about 2% in 2024. That compressed developer margins and rendered marginal projects unviable even at elevated market prices. Rising nominal costs are a real resource problem, not a speculative artifact. They reflect the cost of labour, materials, and consenting delay, and the strongest case for structural reform sits in the civil and infrastructure segment. Auckland's consent volumes swung from roughly 10,000 to 20,000 per year across the 2015-2024 decade, tracking credit conditions and buyer confidence more closely than underlying demand. Each contractionary phase destroys firms and workforce skills that are slow to rebuild. Hysteresis means that supply capacity in each recovery starts below the previous peak. The pre-sales finance model amplifies this, because banks require a substantial share of units to be pre-sold before they will fund construction. Supply is structurally unable to maintain output through a confidence trough, regardless of whether underlying affordability metrics indicate that new supply is needed. Even consented, zoned, and financially viable projects cannot proceed where trunk infrastructure, water, wastewater, stormwater, transport lacks headroom. Auckland Council's infrastructure funding gap, driven by the mismatch between growth-related capital requirements and the revenue tools available to a local authority, means that infrastructure investment has lagged the pace required to unlock the supply potential of the NPSUD upzoning. Trunk capacity is a necessary condition for the consent and build pipeline to function.